Welcome to week two, Thrive in 25. I'm Tom Busch, and I'm one of the partners, and I absolutely love the journey to inner wellness, self-discovery, self-awareness, emotional intelligence. Well, whatever you want to call it. Because I've lived a lot of my life mostly unaware. And I can look back now and go, yeah, I wasn't doing so hot, was I? So I hope that last week was challenging to you. You know, I left you with the challenge of, I want you to look at your beliefs around food. You know, when you're getting ready to eat that big juicy bacon cheeseburger, what were you thinking or what were you believing that brought you to that place? And so for me, here, I'll be a little vulnerable. For me, it's like this. I had such a hard week. Just feel really run down. You know what I deserve? I deserve a big, juicy cheeseburger with bacon, some mayo, and some fries on the side, or maybe tater tots, a couple cold beers. I had a hard week. So there's this belief in me that says, when I have a hard week, I deserve to be fulfilled with, let's just say, delicious food that may not be very nutritious. Here's another thing I found. I know it might be hard to believe, but sometimes my dear wife doesn't think I'm so great. And so let's just say there's this time where there's a little bit of friction going on, not the good kind of friction, but the bad kind of friction. And she's like, eh. And then I'm like, I want some potato chips. Why? Because my belief is when I'm feeling stressed out about relational discord, eating some chips will make me feel better. So there's beliefs around food there. So hopefully you had some discoveries in that space as well. So let's move on to week two. Week two, we're talking about the true self diagram. So I would like to teach this in more like 40 minutes or so, but I don't want to do that to you. So let's go fast. True self diagram. Inside of each of us is a true self. True self. We can think about our true selves as maybe like who we were born to be. What were some of those instinctual gifts and passions and skills that you had growing up? What were the things you really loved? For me, I loved being down at the riverbank, and I loved throwing rocks. I loved catching critters, and I loved fishing. And if I look back to my 7-year-old self, I go, yeah, a lot of those things are still in me. There are things that were put in me, gifted to me, that make Tom Busch Tom Busch. Both quirky and fun. And so inside of me is a true self. But then you know what happened? Bad things happened. So in the next ring, I'm going to write a couple different words. Painful events, and shame. For me, 7th grade was a tough year. It was a year of feeling like I didn't belong, feeling like I was emotionally bullied. I was hurt. It was wounding. And so in that was this moment of shame, you know, like painful events and shame kind of walk hand in hand. Shame is sort of like my non-technical definition, because I don't have a technical one, would be something like when I felt like I didn't belong, when I felt like people didn't want me, when I felt unloved. So I definitely didn't feel loved in 7th grade. So what happens is after we have a painful event or this shameful event, we have one more ring we're going to add on here. In this ring, I'm going to write 3 different word phrases in here. One is projected self. The other is impressive. And the last one will be protected. So for me, I got out of 7th grade, and you know what I said? Hey, I'm not going to let that happen to me again. I cannot endure shame. I cannot endure harassment. So I'm going to put on a projected self, something that I believe will make me more loved. And so we all have done this, and we all do this, where we show the world a version of ourselves that we think is more lovable. And so we project out. I mean, we can think about it like this. Projected self could be, I'm projecting myself as someone who's really smart, or I'm projecting myself who's incredibly athletic, or I'm impressive and I'm on National Honor Society and I have a 4.2 GPA. And there's nothing wrong with having a 4.2 GPA. But when I use that as a mask to hide who I really am, that's when it becomes a problem. There's nothing wrong with being wealthy. But there's something very wrong when I use wealth as a pretense to cover up who I really am. Does that make sense? That was really fast. So we have a true self. We have painful events, and then we put on this projected, impressive, protected self. Yeah, my wife, when she talks about it, was like, I just wanted to scurry down the hallway and not be seen. So her protected self was trying to be invisible. I'm just gonna move around and do as much as I can to not be seen. They're all forms of protection. And so what we're doing is we're presenting ourselves to the world with a lie based on what we believe. I believe I'll be more lovable if I show myself as this. So let's assume this is Tom. And over here, I'm just going to draw the same thing out. I'm just going to try to do it really quickly. Here's a true self. And then, you know what? This person, they had painful events too. And then, you know what they did? Is they put on a projected self. It's worldwide. Everyone does this. Everyone's been hurt. You know, I used to believe that the popular people, the ones who had lots of girlfriends and the ones who were really athletic, I felt like, you know what, they never had to deal with the stuff I dealt with. But the more I live, the more I realize that everyone has had these moments, these painful events, where I didn't feel lovable. I didn't feel good enough. And so if this is Tom, and over here, Barb, there are times where we interact, and it can be my projected self talking to her projected self. Or if we think about like a Chamber of Commerce meeting. Oh, how you been, Tom? Oh, I've never been better. You know, I'm making more money than I ever had before, and I got this fancy new car, and my kids are doing great. Oh, how you doing? Never been better. My wife's dropped dead gorgeous, and I don't know what to do with all the money I'm making. And so what's happening here? Well, it's gross for one. But I call this the BS line, is what we are projecting to each other what we want them to see in us. And then we walk away from those types of interactions and go, why does that feel so gross? Why does that feel so empty? Well, it's basically Barb's lying to me. I didn't really use the very good Barb voice, but Barb's lying to me about who she is, and I'm lying to her about who I am. And why do we walk away feeling empty? Because we're not connecting. We're lying to each other because our projected self is nothing more than a lie. And we walk around in this world and we lie to one another and we go, why don't I have any true connection? Why don't I have more deep conversations. And so the way I believe we were meant to live is like this. This is what I would call the line of authenticity. Did I say this was the BS line? I don't know if I said that or not. But yeah, this is the BS line. It's us lying to one another. But our green line is how we're really supposed to connect. And this is, I want you to see me for who I really am. And there's good things in me. There really are. Like you have to look hard for them. But there's good things in me. But you know what? There's also some ugly things in me. I can be selfish. I can be self-centered. I can be prideful. I can put my identity in things I should never put my identity in. And so, what I really want are relationships where we know each other for who we really are. I don't really see this happening in social media. I tend to see this happening over a cup of coffee, where we risk being hurt and we share with people who we really are. And so I'm going to add one more thing here, and I'm going to try to not make this super spiritual or whatever. But up here, we're going to have one more thing. We're going to say, we'll have God, or you can say the world power. What am I trying to say? How about Mother Nature, whatever. And I believe that if Barb has a connection with God and spirituality, and I have a connection with God and spirituality, I believe God can reveal things to Barb about me. And God may reveal things to me about Barb. So how do we start learning more about our true selves? Because I don't think we totally, truly discover our full true self. I think it's an ongoing work. But I think when we have authentic connection with one another, she can help reveal things in me that I don't know about myself. Because most of our inner gifts, we think everybody else has them, so we don't know that we have these inner gifts. So for example, someone may say, Tom, you have a really generous spirit. I really like how you interacted with these people here, or you gave something here. And I may go, well, everyone's generous. I mean, I'm just being a human. And what we tend to do is we tend to belittle our own giftedness because we think everybody else has that same gift. When really, I think there's really something special about seeing things in ourselves that God has put in us for us to be who we are. Does that make sense? Hope it makes sense. So, to me, this is a picture of how life is supposed to look. This is a picture, if you're a church-going person, to me, this is a picture of what church is supposed to look like. Normally doesn't. But that's the way our relationships are supposed to look, where we know one another for who we really are. Even in my ugliness, even in my selfishness, people still choose to love me, even though they know that I have these tendencies. So I call this the true self diagram. And we use this from the place of going, how much of my life am I really projecting out? How authentic am I really being to who I was created to be? How do I discover who I really am so I don't live divided? And I love when I share this with people and they start seeing things in themselves and they can start releasing the things that they've been projecting for so long. A lot of times we wear these garments, these projected garments for so long that it really starts feeling like that's who we really are. When really it is just a garment that doesn't fit well that we've been wearing for a really long time. And it's not the truth. It's not our true selves. So some things to ponder this week, I would say, is what are some of the things you do to create a projected self? And don't be embarrassed by it, because we all do it. The goal is to do it less. The goal is to learn more about who I really am and to stay whole and true to that person. I believe a huge source of anxiety is measured by the distance between who I was made to be and who I am right now. So if I was made to be Tom Busch, coach, but I was living as Tom Busch, warehouse manager, what's going to happen there? Is I believe I'm going to feel a sense of stress and anxiety because I'm not being who I was born to be. I'm not being who I'm gifted to be. I'm being something different, probably out of some sort of fear that says, this is what provides for me. This is my security. So the challenge is to look at what are the things that you use to project, and then to explore the idea, do I want to lay this down? Do I want to let more people into who I really am? A book recommendation for this week is the book Scary Close by Don Miller, and he explores this concept in depth in that book, and it's a really good story about his own journey into living more in this way, where we connect with people for who we really are and what our lives will look like if we really live this way. I believe that there's an epidemic of sorts of loneliness, and I saw some stats on it recently where something like 30% of people say they feel lonely on a regular basis. And these aren't people who are hermits who live in their basement couch. To me, these are people who have been living like this, projecting one thing out, bouncing off someone else's projected self, without ever cutting through the BS to learn who the other person really is. Well, that's all I have for this week. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this challenge is going really well for you. Have a great one. We'll see you on week 3.